he's going to go to prison. And if he do, it'll be for something very, very small. It wouldn't be nothing what the people think. I don't think he's going to go nowhere long. And at the same time, you got to look at it. The best witness they had is KPD. KPD been an informant for a very, very long time. And KPD is getting ready to go to trial for the murder of Tupac. KPD said it, everybody else know it, and KPD said the money came from Puffy to keep Tupac and myself. So if they really wanted Puffy that bad, KPD would have put a deal with them, got on that stand, and broke it down. That would have been the RICO right there. That would have been murder for hire right there.
And I got a lot of respect for you, Suge. Suge, I got so much respect for you, bro, because when this East Coast, West Coast war could have been shut down, Pac was living, Big was living, Eric B, Big D, y'all set up there and y'all was gonna set up a meeting. Everybody who had something to do with it was supposed to show up, and Puff refused to. You didn't, brother. You wanted this shit to be over with. Even though you didn't f with Puff, y'all wasn't dealing with each other no more. I remember when you and Pac was in the car behind the House of Blues. You was in the red Rolls Royce, Pac was in the white. I was in the car when Puff rolled up on you and said, yo, Suge, we got any problems down here? And you said, bro, I don't know any problems you got. That was even after Jake was. You said, brother, I don't know any problems you.
Gene Deal and Suge Knight are joining forces to finally say what everyone else in the music industry is too scared to whisper. And the bombshell they're dropping? It could shake hip-hop to its core. Gene Deal, Diddy's former bodyguard, claims that Diddy has been secretly working as an FBI informant using that connection to cover up his alleged role in one of the most infamous crimes in music history, the murder of Tupac Shakur. But this isn't just another theory. Gene Deal says he's not just talking, he's being hunted, attacked by people loyal to Diddy, silenced for the things he's dared to say out loud. This isn't clout chasing. This is a man fighting for his life because the truth he holds could finally bring a powerful empire crashing down. And here's where it gets darker. According to Gene, if Diddy ever goes to prison, it won't be for the crimes we suspect. It'll be for something small, something controlled. Because the system is protecting him. It's the same system that's ignored his alleged secrets for decades. Why? Because Diddy has been feeding them those secrets the whole time. Stay tuned because the players involved, the cover-ups exposed, and the chilling silence around Tupac's murder. It all begins to unravel here. For years, people speculated, pointed fingers, and whispered about who really orchestrated Tupac's murder. But Suge Knight, he just came right out and said it. From behind bars, he claimed Diddy was the mastermind. That the East Coast versus West Coast beef was a distraction. That while everyone was watching Death Row and Bad Boy Feud in public, a darker, more calculated plot was unfolding in the background. And at the center of it, all according to Suge, was Diddy. Suge isn't exactly known for holding back. But this time, his words carried a different weight. He wasn't just throwing shade. He was naming names, exposing deals, and pointing to a cover-up that went deeper than anyone expected. Suge claims Diddy paid $1 million to put out a hit on Tupac and Suge himself. And here's where things take a turn. Suge says the man hired to do it, Keef D, confessed. Now, Keef D is the only person ever arrested in connection with Tupac's murder. But his story doesn't end there. It's been talking too, dropping names, giving interviews, and allegedly cutting deals to stay out of prison himself. And Gene Deal, he says Keef D isn't lying. In fact, he says the real question isn't did Diddy order the hit? But why hasn't he been held accountable? Because if this is true, why is Diddy still untouchable? Gene Deal paints a chilling picture, not just of the night Tupac was killed, but of the entire system that allowed it to happen. He says it wasn't just a street beef, it was business, calculated, cold, and backed by powerful people who had everything to gain. If Tupac was gone, Tupac was no longer just a rapper. He was becoming dangerous to the industry, to certain executives, and to anyone who feared what he might say next. Tupac was planning to leave death row. He wanted to start his own label, take control of his masters, and speak out about corruption in the industry. Okay? And that terrified people. According to Gene, the record labels, the executives, the men in suits, they didn't want an artist with that much power. And they definitely didn't want one who was unpredictable, rebellious, and fearless. So when Keefe D claimed he was offered $1 million to take Tupac out, and that the order came from Diddy himself, Gene Deal said he wasn't shocked, because in his eyes, it fit the pattern. The cover-ups, the silence, the fear. What really haunts Gene isn't just the death of Tupac hits, the aftermath. The way the industry moved on, the way the story got buried, the way Diddy's name kept getting scrubbed from the headlines. As if the truth was too inconvenient for the business to handle. What's even more disturbing is that Gene Deal wasn't just speculating, he was there. He lived through the chaos, he watched the machine operate. He saw the media spin, the silence from insiders, and the calculated way everyone protected Diddy while letting other men take the fall. And when Gene started speaking out, he noticed something chilling. No one wanted to listen. Former friends distanced themselves, media outlets turned their heads, and the music industry, total silence. Gene says he's not bitter, he's just tired of the lies. He watched Tupac bleed in real time. He witnessed Biggie's funeral. And now, all these years later, as he watches Keefe D behind bars and Suge Knight naming names, he wonders, why has Diddy never once had to answer for any of it? Why is it that everyone else involved has been investigated, indicted, or destroyed except him? He believes it's because Diddy played the game better than anyone. He aligned with power, moved in silence, and buried the past with champagne and success. But Gene Deal says the ghosts haven't gone away. Tupac's murder is still unsolved. The truth is still in pieces. And for every person that was silenced, there's someone like him still trying to put the pieces back together. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get darker, Gene Deal dropped a chilling bombshell. Diddy didn't act alone. According to Gene, there was someone inside Death Row Records, a traitor, a Judas, someone Tupac trusted. Someone who had access to private movements, schedules, and the exact car Tupac would be in that night in Vegas. This insider, this double agent, allegedly fed Diddy and his team critical information where Tupac would be, what time, and who would be with him. Gene won't name names publicly, but his tone said enough. He knows who it was. He knows more than one person helped orchestrate the hit. And even more haunting, he says they were all black, all from the same community, tearing each other down from the inside. And then came the courtroom reveal, when Keefe D stood trial and named Diddy as the man who put up the $1 million bounty. When surveillance footage showed him getting attacked in jail just days after pointing the finger. Coincidence? Gene doesn't think so. Neither do Suge Knight, or the fans who have followed this case for decades. For Gene, this wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. Because the moment he spoke Diddy's name, his life changed. He got followed. He got threatened. And then one night, just like he predicted, Diddy's street guys found him. They didn't just approach Gene Deal, they surrounded him. No words at first, just presence, just pressure. The kind of silence that says everything without a sound. Gene says one of them finally leaned in close and asked, "You sure you want to keep talking?" That moment wasn't about curiosity. It was a warning. And it confirmed what Gene had feared all along. This wasn't just old beef resurfacing. It was an active effort to shut him down, to bury the truth with intimidation before the world could fully hear it. But Gene didn't run. He didn't flinch. He stood his ground and made one thing clear. He wasn't going to be silenced. Not after everything he saw, not after everything he carried for decades. And then he said something that made even longtime fans pause. He hinted that if anything ever happened to him, everyone should look to Diddy's inner circle first. Not the label, not the streets, the circle. And that's when Suge Knight stepped back in with his own voice from behind bars. In a rare interview, he doubled down on what Gene said. He claimed that the industry was built on cover-ups and contracts, signed in blood. That Diddy had protection far beyond music-powerful lawyers, shady connections, maybe even federal strings pulled quietly behind closed doors. Part 7. Suge didn't just throw out wild accusations. He spoke like someone who had watched it all go down in real time. From the East Coast-West Coast rivalry to the night of Tupac's murder, Suge claimed none of it was random. And when he talked about the so-called coincidences and who lived, who died, and who walked away untouched, he made it clear. He believes the system didn't fail. It worked exactly how it was designed. Certain people were meant to be erased. Others were meant to survive. And Diddy, he always seemed to survive. Meanwhile, Gene Deal painted an even darker picture. He recalled the nights leading up to Biggie's death, how security protocols were ignored, how Diddy insisted on riding in one car while Biggie was left exposed in another. Gene asked questions back then no one wanted to answer. And when Biggie was killed, Gene says it felt like he was watching the final scene of a script someone had written in advance. And now, decades later, both Gene and Suge are connecting the dots in front of us. Not just for closure, but for justice. They're calling out the names behind the curtain. They're saying that what happened to Tupac and Biggie wasn't just tragedy, it was orchestrated.
The shooter, the person who shot Tupac, did you get to see their face? And was this a person that worked for Death Row?
Yeah. What I would say is this. I'm not calling a certain person Judas, whereas names could go with those people are Judas. I know it was more than one person involved in the assassination. And respectfully, I would say that I gave the husband, I gave the wife, and by the way, they're black people. I stand on my blackness because I am black. So out of respect to them and their project, you the homie, but you gonna have to wait to see what really happened when they put it out. That's all I can say about that part. But
the fact that he saw, and he was overworked, and that he saw things that just didn't make sense, and that he had to run down on Suge Knight, or would have if Suge Knight would have actually been there.
I was thinking about that. If all of this stuff is true, Suge Knight ain't had nothing on Diddy.
What you mean?
You think so?
Suge
Or do we
Knight has
just
always been known as the boogeyman of hip hop. But if all of this stuff is true, Suge ain't had nothing on Diddy.
Oh, you mean as far as the type of person they are?
Being a boogeyman.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like bad.
I didn't.
Bad.
the answers are there. How could you not say they don't want to see Puffy get life? The FBI is the most powerful people in the world. They're government. They have great prosecution people. Look at the prosecution rate. I think it's maybe 92, 98%. If you was just looking at it, you wouldn't think the prosecutors, as great as they are, that they was really trying to get this man off the street. But it's still, if I was Puffy, I did some time and got it out the way. Because if he go in there and do a little time, he was going to feel he paid some debt to society. He'd start off where he left. If he get no time, the street's going to know the deal's been cut. If you get no time, nobody in the industry is going to f with him. It's going to be a bad problem for him because Puffy got to have security 24 hours a day. It ain't Puffy can get out of jail and start his own car up and drive around and live life. He ain't without security. He know he on borrowed time. So he had to have security. He ain't without drugs. See, he probably wouldn't be able to have a conversation with nobody. He probably wouldn't be able to look nobody in the eye. He probably wouldn't even be able to back.
And the deeper you go, the more chilling it becomes. Because now we're not just talking about old rivalries or petty beef. We're talking about a machine. A system that protected Diddy at every turn, not just because he was rich or famous, but because taking him down would mean unraveling a whole web of secrets. According to Gene, Diddy knew how to play both sides, music and money, streets and suits. And anyone who stepped out of line, they either disappeared, got discredited, or stayed quiet out of fear. Gene even hinted that there were higher-ups people above Diddy who needed him to stay clean. Why? Because if Diddy ever fell, he might start naming names, powerful ones. The kind you don't say out loud unless you're ready to burn the whole industry to the ground. And maybe that's why every time a new accusation pops up, it fades just as quickly. No trial, no real investigation, it's just silence. But this time feels different. Gene's getting louder, Suge's doubling down. And fans, especially those who grew up on Tupac and Biggie, are listening. The internet isn't letting go. Every clip, every interview, every suspicious coincidence is being rewatched, reanalyzed, and archived by a generation that doesn't trust the polished story anymore. And when you rewind the timeline, all those weird gaps and unexplained moves start making sense. Like why so many people close to Diddy either vanished from the public eye or ended up ruined. Why was it that every time someone tried to expose him, whether it was about money, violence, or deeper secrets, they got brushed off as bitter or unstable? Gene Deal once said something that hit hard. Said, when you're loyal to a fault, if you protect things you shouldn't, and when the guilt gets heavy, the silence gets louder. That silence, it's now being shattered. Not just by Gene and Suge, but by the people who feel betrayed, who supported an empire they now believe was built on pain, manipulation, and fear. And Suge Knight, who's no stranger to controversy himself, is now playing the role of unfiltered truth teller. He's throwing names out without blinking. Not just Diddy's, but others too, people still active in the game, protected by millions and backed by institutions. He says what most insiders are too scared to say, that Diddy's rise to the top wasn't just business savvy, it was backed by blood control and possibly something darker. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Suge Knight and Gene Deal both suggest that this wasn't just about music or power. They hint at federal protection, at Diddy being more than just a music mogul. They claim he might have been cooperating with the FBI for years. That the reason no charges ever stuck, the reason lawsuits disappeared, and the reason people suddenly went quiet wasn't luck or good lawyers. It was because Diddy had a get-out-of-jail-free card, allegedly trading secrets from inside the industry to stay protected. If that's true, then every scandal he escaped, every violent altercation, every lawsuit, every whispered rumor wasn't just avoided. It was covered strategically, legally, silently, and it paints a chilling picture of an empire built not just on beats and bars, but on betrayal and backdoor deals. For fans who grew up on bad boy hits, it's heartbreaking to think that behind those nostalgic anthems might be a legacy soaked in silence and fear. And for those who are close to Tupac, it's infuriating, because it suggests that his murder wasn't just a tragedy, was a transaction. It's a piece of the puzzle that was buried on purpose to keep certain people powerful, rich, and untouchable. And then came the whispers about the missing surveillance footage. The Vegas shooting that ended Tupac's life was one of the most public, most shocking events in hip-hop history, and yet footage that should have been everywhere somehow vanished. Suge Knight, the only man in the car with Tupac, has said repeatedly that things don't add up, that cameras facing the intersection where it happened mysteriously weren't working, that the investigation was sloppy at best and deliberate at worst. Gene Deal doubled down on this in his interviews. He said, there were people in power who didn't want the truth out, that when you get too close to it, you get silenced or worse. He described how everyone around the case seemed to either fall off, go missing, or end up with criminal charges of their own. It was like the truth had a body count, and anyone who tried to speak on it ended up paying a price. These aren't just conspiracy theories for clicks. They're coming from men who were there, who watched the rise and fall of an empire from the inside, who held secrets that the world wasn't supposed to hear. And when they finally did speak, they didn't speak lightly. They sounded like men carrying guilt, fear, and the weight of a story that had been locked away for decades. But perhaps the most haunting revelation came when Gene Deal said, with chilling calm, that the night Tupac was killed, it wasn't just a random shooting. It was an execution. He claimed that law enforcement and industry power players already knew it was coming, that the streets were talking and people in suits were listening. The idea that Tupac's death was not only expected, but allowed to happen is what makes this more than a murder story. It's a cautionary tale. Suge Knight has echoed this idea in his own way. He's hinted that Tupac had become too powerful, too independent, too aware of what was really going on behind the curtain. He was trying to leave death row, trying to start his own thing, trying to expose contracts, expose deals, take back control. And when you try to leave the game on your own terms, when you stop being an asset and start becoming a threat, history shows how fast you get taken out. That's what connects all the dots. The betrayal, the silence, the unanswered questions. Tupac wasn't just a rapper. He was a revolutionary spirit in a dangerous system. And when men like Gene Deal and Suge Knight speak now, it's not just to tell what happened. It's to make sure we remember what that system can do. So when we revisit Tupac's death now decades later, we're not just reopening a cold case. We're peeling back the layers of an industry that feeds off ambition and punishes defiance. Gene Deal's claims don't exist in a vacuum. They sit alongside a long history of silence, fear, and strategic erasure. And when Suge Knight, of all people, starts confirming those same suspicions, it forces us to ask whether we ever truly understood what we witnessed back in 1996. The questions keep piling up. Why did the Las Vegas police fail to act with urgency? Why did so many eyewitnesses go unprotected or were silenced? Why were so many industry insiders suddenly unwilling to speak, even when they'd been so vocal before? Every piece of this puzzle leads to a single painful truth. Tupac might have died on the street, but the plan to silence him was set in motion long before that bullet ever left the gun. And now, with people like Gene finally breaking their silence, we're not just hearing a story, we're witnessing a reckoning. Because the truth, no matter how long it's buried, doesn't stay down forever. Gene Deal didn't just point fingers, he gave specifics, names, motives, behaviors. He described the mood in Bad Boys Circle in the days leading up to Tupac's murder, the fear, the tension, the pressure not to ask questions. He says there were meetings, warnings, and quiet threats. That the beef wasn't just about East versus West, it was about control and the fear of what Tupac might expose next. According to Gene, Diddy wasn't just reacting to a rivalry. He was trying to contain a storm. And when you add Suge Knight's comments to the mix, it's like two men on opposite ends of a war finally agreeing on what really happened. Suge doesn't mince words. He says he knows who was behind Tupac's death and that it wasn't some random street beef. He talks about betrayal from within, about people close to Tupac who might have played both sides. The implication? That the industry didn't just watch Tupac fall, they helped push him. These are not wild fan theories. These are men who were there, speaking from experience, and their words carry the weight of truth. It's chilling to think how long this story has been hidden in plain sight. All the documentaries, the tributes, the retrospectives, they all danced around it. But now, with Gene and Suge opening up, that fog is lifting. And then comes the part that fans can't stop talking about, the role of the FBI. Gene Deal flat out said, "What many have whispered for years, that the feds were always watching, always, listening and maybe, just maybe, pulling strings." He claimed Tupac was under constant surveillance, that people around him were feeding information, that the government didn't just see him as a rapper but as a problem. A political voice, a rebel with too much power. Too many people listening, too many truths in his lyrics. Think about it, Tupac wasn't just making songs. He was challenging systems, from police brutality to poverty to the prison industrial complex. He wasn't afraid to speak up. And when someone that fearless gains global influence, the people in power get nervous. Gene's account paints a picture where Tupac wasn't just up against rival artists, he was up against institutions. And maybe that's why, even after all these years, the full truth has never come out. Because too many people in high places don't want it to. But now that these insider voices are breaking their silence, the puzzle is finally coming together. Piece by piece, brick by brick. And it's revealing a version of events that's more disturbing and more believable than anything we've been told.